Now, Downing Street is facing criticism for effectively blocking the publication of a parliamentary report saying that Russia poses a threat to the UK until after the general election. The report, compiled by the Parliamentary Intelligence and Security Committee, includes information from the UK intelligence services concerning Russian attempts to influence the outcome of the 2016 EU referendum. Let's speak now to Lord Peter Ricketts, a former permanent Under-Secretary at the Foreign Office. Thanks for joining us. So do you think it is in the public and the national interest that this report is published before the election?
Yes, I do. I think there's a clear public interest in knowing what the Russians are up to in their manipulation of opinion in this country and more widely. This is a report, as you say, which has been put together with secret intelligence, but also other material as well. But the key point is that it's been sitting with the government since March, being carefully looked at by the intelligence agencies to check that there's nothing in there which might prejudice their work. And what came to the Prime Minister for sign-off was a fully agreed document which probably had certain things taken out for security reasons and was ready for sign-off and publication. And given that there is clearly a public interest to have this out before the election, there's a lot of national security issues around Russia. I can't see any reason why this can't be signed off and published before the Houses rise tomorrow.
I mean, presumably the government will be acting on it when it comes to this election. So why so important it's published? I mean, they know what is in it, as long as it's published at some stage.
Well, the government know what's in it, but the rest of us don't, including Parliament and everyone who will be voting in the election. The thing to understand about this Intelligence and Security Committee is it's the only select committee of Parliament that doesn't have the right to publish its own reports. All the others can go ahead and publish their reports, and then after a while, the government replies. This one, it needs the Prime Minister's okay to publish because of the need to take out anything that is sensitive. And therefore, it's not that the government need time to respond to it. What we need is for the report to be out there so everyone can read the main judgments that the committee comes to and be informed about what the Russians may or may not be up to before we move to the election. That seems to me absolutely self-evident. We had a discussion of it in the House of Lords this afternoon. There was pretty much unanimous pressure on the government to get this thing out, and then, of course, to take their time to respond after the election.
So why would they be delaying this if they are? I mean, I have to say, they say there's no agenda, simply a process that has to be gone through, they say, before publication. But what is your feeling about why this is happening?
Well, none of us know, of course, what is in this report, and perhaps it is just a question of process. But if it is, then there's absolutely no reason why they can't speed up the process. They've still got 24 hours to get it out of the Prime Minister's in-tray and out into the public. So I don't know, but the way it's being handled gives everyone sort of grounds to feel that there's something suspicious going on. There may well not be anything suspicious, but the way it's being handled doesn't give any of us confidence that this is being done in the normal way, given that normally, in the normal process of events, it would have been signed off and published by now.
Yeah, I mean, isn't the reality that, that actors, whether it be Russia or maybe China, I mean, will be wanting to interfere in some way with the election?
Well, it may well be, but then the answer to that is transparency. It's much better for all of us to be aware of what the risks might be, so we're alert to manipulation through Facebook or Twitter or whatever it may be, than not to be aware. And since this concerns all electors across the country, it seems to me that if there's anything in this report that is useful to alert people to what may be going on, then that's another reason to get it published.
I mean, what would you fear? You say you don't know what's in it. I mean, what do you fear is in it?
Well, I mean, it's not that I fear. I mean, I think it's quite wide-ranging from what I gather. I mean, it talks about Russia's behavior across quite a wide spectrum, not just manipulation, but Russian money in London and all this sort of thing. So I think it's a wide view of Russia's behavior towards Western countries and the feeling that they can somehow subvert or manipulate opinion in these countries. So it's not just focused on what they've done with elections. And I mean, there may well be evidence about them interfering with elections, not just in Britain, but around the world as well, in which case let's get that out. I mean, I've got no reason to think there's any great sort of smoking gun there that the government should be worried about. I don't know. But I think the answer is now that public expectation is at such a high level that it is really damaging to have it still sitting in an in-tray in number 10 for process reasons.
OK. Lord Ricketts, Peter Ricketts, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Joining me now is Tom Tugendhat. Let me ask you about another issue now. Downing Street's reportedly blocked the release of a report from the Intelligence and Security Committee on Russian meddling in the EU referendum. Do you think the chair of that committee, Dominic Grieve, should go ahead and publish anyway?
Well, I think that this is a report that we need to read. I think this is an extremely important report and it should be read as soon as possible. I would like it to be published tomorrow. As you know, tomorrow is the last day that Parliament is sitting, and I really urge the government to change their mind on this and to publish it.
Can Dominic Grieve, the chairman of that committee, publish without breaking the Official Secrets Act, or does he need Downing Street's permission?
Well, I'm afraid I'm not the legal expert on this, so my understanding is that parliamentary papers can be published according to the 1840 Act by will of Parliament and not will of government. So my understanding is that he could, but I may be wrong on that because the Intelligence and Security Committee is raised under a different status than other select committees of the House.
He's accused Number 10 of telling, quote, whopping untruths over this. Do you think that is the case?
Well, he's been in contact with Number 10 and I haven't, so I'm afraid I'll leave him to speak for himself. But I still think that this report should be published as soon as possible. I think it's important that we know, and this is one of the reports that we've got coming out, our last report coming out tomorrow, is on how autocracies deal with democracies and how democracies must face the real threat that is posed. And this is another example. We've seen it in academia. Many people have reported about it, including the Sunday Times over the last 2 weekends, about how the Chinese state has been interfering in academic freedoms in the UK, and we should see this in democratic freedoms from Russia as well.
So should your party hand back the many thousands of pounds of donations it's received from Russian donors?
Well, I think we should make sure that all donations are lawful, and I think that's exactly what the party... Well, that's exactly what the party's got a responsibility to do. You know, there are legal migrants into the UK from many different countries around the world. And so if people are British citizens, lawfully in the UK as citizens, they pay tax here, they have a lawful right to be involved in political action.
Tom Tugendhat, thank you very much for joining me.